What's up, everybody? Welcome to this video. This is a video of me taking the tryout members for the team Alamode through the pre-tryout warm-up. This isn't, the perfect warm-up because the goal of a warm-up is to feel the most prepared to play. So if there are things that you need to add to this, by all means, you can do that. If there is a warm-up routine that already works really well for you, don't feel like you have to adopt what I'm putting out here because it's quote unquote perfect. No, that's not the case at all. Do whatever makes you feel the most prepared to play. And everybody's going to have things that are different and work well for them. This is just what I like, and I figured sharing might be helpful for some people. So let's get into it now. I'm going to talk over the video that you're going to be watching. So the very first thing we did here is we spread it out on the sideline. Most teams are going to start off with like a warm-up jog or something and just get the body moving, get the heart rate going. So what I really like is jogging sideline to sideline, but getting a hip flip in there. The hip flip is a very important action in Ultimate. You have to be able to flip from running to backpedaling or vice versa. So if we're going to jog anyways, why don't we just get that hip flip in? It just gets the body moving a little bit more, gets the hips in the torso a little bit more dynamic. So we just kind of go sideline to sideline here. Starts to wake everything up. The next thing that we'll get into is a karaoke. Everybody's probably do this. Karaoke, whatever you call it. Doesn't have to be with a knee drive, but I like it. Again, it's just another way to get the body moving, get the heart rate up. I like a little bit of a longer distance like this, but you can see we're getting that lower body moving, kind of the hips and the ankles moving at a bunch of different angles. So it's just a great way, in my opinion. If you're going to do it in a warm-up anyways, doing it at the beginning is fine, just to get the heart rate going the same way that you would a jog or just running a little bit to get your body warmed up. Now, what I really like here, this isn't anything fancy, but I think just getting like everybody a little bit more together and like facing each other for a warm-up is really good. So that's what we're doing here. We make like a big U, and then we're getting into more of like our stretching or mobility type stuff. So first one that I like is the wide stance around the world. So you're going to get into a wide stance and you're going to imagine you're holding a disc and you're reaching it as far as possible, and then you're just rotating. So we're getting the hips stretching and kind of loosening up a little bit by getting that wide stance, and then getting the spine moving, so the back muscles, the core muscles, and a little bit of the hip muscles too, since we're moving at these different angles. But we're getting the spine moving and starting to loosen it up. Obviously we need the spine to be loose for throwing and the most important things in Ultimate, but also sprinting, cutting, jumping. Our spine moves for that, so it's important for that to be fluid. We next go into an iso long lunge here and then some side bends. Again, we get the spine moving, but because we're in this iso lunge position, we're getting some hip mobility, and we're also starting to activate the quads, so we're getting some good work on the knees there to help warm them up. Ultimate is very heavy on the knees. Ultimate players notoriously have bad knees, so if we can just add in a little bit of that isometric work for the knees and start to make them feel just a little bit better, right, that's always a win in my book. Then we go into the single leg RDL. Here we're getting a really big stretch in the hamstrings, but we're doing it under load because we're having to control and stabilize ourselves, right? We're getting those muscles stretching, we're also getting them contracted, so quote unquote activating them a little bit more, which I think is always good. Ultimate players also are pretty notorious for having bad stability, in my opinion, or at least just from my experience, and we need pretty good stability. Obviously, if we're jumping, cutting, sprinting, right, we have to be very stable when we do that, or at least be balanced when we're doing that, not necessarily stable. But also when we're throwing, right, when we're pivoting, there's a lot of different movements and like balancing that's happening if I'm going from a fake on one side to the other side. So being balanced and stable and starting to warm that up a little bit can be really great. And of course, we know that sprinting and running, very heavy on the hamstrings. So any sort of activation, mobility that we can get for that early on, in my opinion, is going to be really good. And of course, right, this is again another reminder that if there's anything that you need to add before this, right, some stretching, if you need to stretch out your hamstrings or hip flexors before that stuff, right, completely okay, right? There were guys before we started the warm-up that were already stretching, so that's fine to do. Next, we go into a curtsy to lateral lunge. I really like this because it starts to get us moving side to side. I think a lot of stuff in warm-up and training is very forward and backwards dominant, but we forget that side-to-side action that happens a lot through Ultimate. So you're bringing one knee behind, so you're getting kind of a good hip and glute stretch and kind of activation through one side, and then you're going to that lateral lunge. So again, you're getting a nice hip stretch and some hip activation with that. You can also see what's happening at the ankle. So we're getting like the ankle to kind of rock side to side. And when we're cutting, when we're moving side to side, right, our ankle gets into these weird positions. So this is a way where we can start to kind of grease that groove and get the ankle moving side to side in some of those weird positions. But we're also, again, doing it under a load. So we're getting some quote unquote activation of those muscles. Overall, feeling really good. I think this is also great for glute activation, right? Not all glute activation has to be those little like banded walks and clamshells, right? If you can get that muscle moving through a full range of motion, that's also really good. Now we're starting to move, starting to wake things up a little bit. So pogo hops, right? I think these are great to just get the ankles springy, start to warm them up a little bit. I like this split stance here, so we're getting it working at different angles. I also said to get a little bit of height here, so we're getting just a slight knee bend with this, which I think can be good to kind of get the knee feeling springy as well. Then we want to get a lot more angles, so we're going double foot side to side, so we're working that side to side action, forward and backwards. Again, there's a lot of different angles that we move at, and ultimately a lot of angles that our feet and our ankles get into. So I think it's important for us to just start to warm that up, wake that up. Then these are fun. So we're getting into a deep squat and we're just pulsing here. So we're getting into that deep hip bend, knee bend, getting things to feel springy, activated. Then we're getting to a split squat position, doing the same thing, just pulsing in a deep split squat. So we're getting our knees, our hips, our ankles comfortable and activated and feeling springy in those deeper positions, right? We don't want to always just be nice and tall because we know we have to get low in ultimate. So it's important to feel activated and warmed up in those low positions. Now we're starting to work deceleration a little bit. Cutting is not just accelerating out. Obviously, there's the deceleration component of it. So this is a kind of self-fall deceleration drill where you're going to lean forward, have a hard plant on the ground, and then pop back out. And I told people, work at your own pace with this, right? This is the first kind of cutting or deceleration thing we're doing. So if you need to just do a small little lean forward and then come back out, that's completely okay. But over time, start to add a little bit of speed into this. The more speed that you fall forward and kind of attack the ground with your leg, then obviously the more force that your knee and your body is going to have to overcome and then redirect back out. So we did some forward backwards, and then we did the same thing side to side. Again, leaning to the side, letting that foot pop out, attack the ground, and then come back out. So that way we're getting that deceleration, that cutting stuff warmed up forward and backwards like we see a lot, and also side to side like we see a lot. So the next one, this is just a way to make things a little bit more fun. I don't know if I would really call this fun, but maybe just a little bit more engaging, right? But I like this vertical jump and a warm-up drill where you're going to get with a partner, face each other, and then when you go into your vertical jump, you're clapping hands in the air. So you're going to go with each side. So we did 3 going left right approach and then 3 right left, right? This makes it so that it forces you to go vertical. I mean, a lot of people when they jump in, if just jumping forward a lot, not really vertical like you're supposed to do with a vertical jump. So if you go vertical, or if you go horizontal here, if you go forward here, you're going to hit your partner, right? It also forces you to be a little bit more controlled, right? You don't want to land on each other's ankles or on each other's feet. So it forces you to be coordinated and actually conscious about what you're doing, not just going through the motions and jumping. That's something that's tough with a warm-up a lot of times is, right, it's hard to feel like there's a reason to do these things. So if you can make it engaging, if you can give an external goal like clapping hands, right, then that can always be great. So here we're starting to get things moving. So we're going high knees. Again, we just want to take everything that we just did, the mobility and kind of the stationary dynamic stuff, and start to get it moving forward and backwards. So we did basic stuff, high knees, butt kicks here, nothing too fancy, probably things that you have all seen. Then we get a little bit more specific to the hamstrings. Again, hamstrings, very notorious for getting a lot of injuries, right? So we want to make sure that we're taking care of those. So we're doing some Frankenstein kicks here, a little bit of a fall there. That was intense. But yeah, some hamstring kicks here, or Frankenstein kicks, getting the dynamic warm-up action of the hamstring. I should also mention that this doesn't have to take very, very long time. I think all in all, this took exactly 11 minutes. I'm going to cut some of it out in the video, obviously, so it should be a little bit shorter, but all in all, this took 11 minutes. And it's also important to know what is coming after this. So I knew that the team was going to go into 4-line in some drills after this, so I don't have to make sure that the warm-up is super, super extensive. If we were going straight into a scrim after this, then I would probably add some more stuff at the very end to make sure that we are up to game speed, like some near change direction drills, maybe some more sprints, whatever it is, to make sure that we are ready to play 7s or mini, right? But going into 4-line, I know that people are going to gradually ramp up in speed when they're going to their cuts or they're just running, right, for a deep ball, whatever it is. They're going to get a lot of that warm-up action, those cutting and running actions through 4-line. So I don't need to do a ton of that beforehand. four line is kind of going to act as a warm up itself. So I just want to make sure that people have cut and sprinted a little bit to be ready for four line, but we don't have to completely exhaust them in the warm up. So you can always look at what is coming after the warm up too, to know how much you actually have to do in the warm up. So with that said, kind of the big running cutting drill that we did here was getting a little bit of change of direction into a sprint. So we did 2 shuffles out, 2 shuffles back in, and then you're sprinting to the sideline. I like this because, again, it just gets a little bit of that change direction, that deceleration in there. I think a lot of warm-ups are lacking change direction and decelerations, potentially because people are afraid of doing a little bit too much. They don't want to overwork people, but there's a ton of change of direction with cutting in ultimate. So we got to make sure that we are warmed up for that at all the different angles that it can happen. So we want to go both ways, facing the same direction. That way we're getting those change directions and those shuffles going both ways. And then the very last thing that we did here, so again, building up in speed, building up in intensity of the cut, we're doing a crossover step, back out. So that's 2 potentially pretty hard cuts depending on how fast you go into it, and again into a sprint. So all in all, we end up getting 4 kind of short accelerations or 4 short sprints with these 2 exercises back to back, and then we get a good amount of change of directions. So again, we're going to do that crossover step facing the same direction so we can hit both sides equally. But this made sure that we were very ready for four line and all the cutting and the running that comes with that without completely overdoing it. And once again, if there's anything that you need to add to this, anything that you feel like you need to remove from this, feel free to do so. This is just what I like, what I recommend, but it is not the quote unquote perfect warm up or the objectively right warm up or anything like that. It's just a guide that can hopefully help some of you out. Let me know if you have any thoughts, comments, questions down below in the comments. Please like this video and subscribe if you'd like more content like this. And thank you very much for watching.